Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar presentation focused on person-centered service delivery. My name is Jason Laws, and I am Therap's Director of Quality and Data Initiatives. And we at Therap greatly appreciate you guys taking a little time to spend with us for today's presentation, which is the second in a series of webinars and presentations that we're doing this summer focused on the intersection person-centeredness and being data-driven, and really the overall importance and impact that this has on quality service delivery. This series that we're doing here really gets to the very core of who we are and what we do at Therap. As you guys know, we are a system that is extremely person-centered and provides all stakeholders an opportunity to collaborate together in support of the individuals that you serve in terms of reaching their best life. At the same time, we are also very data-driven in what we do at Therap, and we understand that the tremendous amounts of data that you guys capture in our system are more than just entries in a database, but instead they really shape the foundation of the decision-making and ultimately the overall quality of the supports that are being provided. Last month, back in June, we did a presentation focused on the value specifically of data and the overall importance of data literacy to continue to inform practice and support for folks with disabilities. And as you can see here, we did record that webinar. For those of you that were unable to join us, we're going to be providing this link to you, so you can certainly catch up on that one if you weren't able to get with us last month. But for today, we're going to shift our focus over to the concept of person-centered services and its role as a foundational element in terms of what we strive to be as service providers, whether we're an entire state, whether we are a provider agency, or if we're a single direct support professional supporting an individual. And we've got a couple of phenomenal presenters with us, and Shay and Heather, that I'll introduce in just a moment to share their perspective on the value of person-centeredness to overall service delivery. And then lastly, next month, we're going to kind of be marrying those two concepts. We're going to bring together the intersection of person-centeredness and data-driven decision-making and really focus there on the necessity of using these tools in tandem to maximize the overall quality of the supports that we provide. Now, as we get started, a little bit of housekeeping in here. We are going to be recording this session today, and at its conclusion, probably by early next week, we're going to be sharing out a link to this presentation to all of you guys who are attendees, so that you'll be able to kind of get back to it if there's some particular ideas that you want to see, or if you want to share it with some of your colleagues within your organization. Also, I'm sure by now most of us are pretty familiar with Zoom, but for those that may not be, given the number of folks that we have on the call today, obviously we have everyone muted. But that doesn't mean we don't want this to be interactive. We certainly encourage you guys to utilize the tools that you have within your Zoom panel, including the question and answer section, as well as the Zoom chat within the application, so that you can share your thoughts, your questions, and things like that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that chat throughout the presentation, and we're going to be holding some time towards the end so that we can address some of the questions that come through and get our speakers' perspective on the kinds of things that you guys are interested in. The last piece is around the captioning. If any of you guys would like a live transcript of this, we're going to make sure that we activate the captioning in here, which I am going to get in here and turn on in just a moment. But you are going to be able to turn on that so you have a live transcript as we go through. With that, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you guys our two presenters this afternoon, my colleagues at Therap. First of all, Ashaya, better known as Shay Dotson, our Assistant Director of Person-Centered Practices, as well as Heather Daly, our Southeast Business Development Consultant. And with that, it is my pleasure to hand it over to you guys. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jason. We are excited to have everyone here today. We're excited that you've come to join us. As Jason said, my name is Ashaya Dotson, better known as Shay. That is my nickname. I am excited to be here and to share my passion and experience in this field, especially related to person-centered practices. I have had the pleasure of being a certified person-centered thinking trainer since 2010. I'm also certified for teaching organizations how to develop person-centered coaches, and I have served as a co-facilitator for People Planning Together. As well, I am a Charting the Life course ambassador and just have had lots of experience to serve over time. So I'm excited to come today and to share my heart related to person-centered practices and how it can impact lives and the people in your organization. I want to take an opportunity now to give Heather the opportunity to introduce who she is to you all before we get started.
Hey folks, thank you so much for being with us this lovely Friday, and just super excited to be able to share all the great stuff we have for you guys today. Just wanted to shout and say that I come from the IDD community. I have over 20 years of experience in that field. Most recently, that experience is that as an executive director of an IDD program. But like Shay, I have a good bit of experience in person-centered practices. So I am the past chair of the Georgia chapter of the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices. And I am a person-centered thinking trainer and coach. And also I sit on the Georgia Advisory Council for developmental disabilities as a parent. So I also parent a teenager with autism, which, also brings in a different perspective of person-centered, because I've seen it in action in real life in my own home. So thanks for letting me share a little bit about myself, and I'll hand it back over to Shay.
Awesome, thank you so much, Heather. So we're excited to be here to have a conversation, to just really reset our thoughts, our intentions about what person-centered or having a person-centered perspective is. So, when you think about it, person-centered planning and person-centered practices, all the buzz, right? It's what everybody's talking about. And sometimes when things get so elevated in conversations, when it becomes the name or the theory next door, you start to wonder, does it really matter? Like, what is the reason that we're doing it? What's driving, what's our underlying intent? And so I always like to have these conversations to say, why does it really matter to you as an organization to be person-centered? Like, what is the why that's driving what you do? And when I think about what is the why, I think about this awesome presentation I saw a couple of years ago from Simon Sinek, when he did this analogy and he shared this story in TED Talk about the golden circle, the golden why. And he started to challenge our thinking as people who are in business or in our communities and making impact. And so I really want to ask, what is our why? Because I think what happens is when we begin to think about who we are as an organization and what we do, we focus on the how and the what. We focus on how we're going to go about creating these services. We focus on how we're going to hire staff. We focus on the mechanics of it. And we focus on the what, the services that we're delivering. We focus on whether we're going to provide residential services, employment, whether we're going to do, community living, whatever those particular services are. And we get so proficient at those things that somehow we lose the why. And the why is what should really be the heartbeat of what we do. It should be what is driving our decision. It should be essential to who we are as people in an organization. And so that is why it's so important for us to go back to person-centered thinking and person-centered practices, because that then becomes the heart and drives our why. It becomes what we get our information from, that drives the decisions that we make and how we go about approaching people for better supports. But at the heart of it, the why is the essence of we're in this because we want to see people have the life that they desire. And it's focused on the individuals. It's focused on our staff. It's focused on who we are as an organization. If we go about this and we don't have the why, we're only focused on the what and the how, then we will not have the heartbeat, and we'll create a bunch of pretty papers, we'll create processes, but they won't have any real impact or effect. And so the why, and looking at the golden circle, can also be related to another person-centered concept. It could be related to the donut. So for those of you who've been through person-centered thinking training, maybe you can remember that particular the donut. And so if we think about it, the why is about knowing your mission, right? That is the core responsibility in who we are as an organization and what we want to be. The why is about that guiding your mission and what you're doing. The how is the judgment and creativity that you're using as an organization. And so the organizations and circle of supports are empowered to try new things, right? To think about how they will follow up on the supports that are needed, but they're following the lead of the individual that's saying, this is what I want to experience and achieve in my life. And then finally, the what is related to the end game, right? This is a reminder that it's not our paid responsibility to run someone else's life, but it is our job to provide help and support that is needed and requested by the individual so that they are able to live freely and direct their own lives and to really get to the life that they desire. So at the essence of the why, this is what being person-centered is all about. It's really about valuing people for people. It's about really having a passion for helping people to achieve the dreams that they have articulated and they acknowledge that they want. It's about helping people live beyond the label of their disability and knowing that they can experience life to the same degree that people without disabilities can with the right support from them. It's about helping people go from presence to contribution, from people just knowing who they are to really experiencing the gift of who they are. And in order for us to get that, it requires a shift in our thinking. All of us and each of the people that we're supporting are on a journey in life. And in this journey, we all bring with us past experiences that have built us to the place that we are now. And those past experiences will either aid to the positive things that push us toward or on the trajectory of the future goals that we have, or they're going to be the things that hold us back. And in understanding or seeing a person's life through person-centered practices means that we take an opportunity to help that person learn and for us to learn who that person is based on their past, but how do we put the right supports around them based on what they're requesting and asking for that pushes them towards the life that they desire. And so we reflect on what is person-centered thinking, because at the heart of it, the thinking has to change in order for our responses and our behavior to change in order to become an organization that embodies person-centered practices. And so when we think about person-centered thinking, it really helps us to reshape the way that we interact with people and how we understand their responses. It helps us to get an accurate picture of what people desire and person-centered thinking as we begin to use that as our guiding post or our guiding light, if you will, our guiding principles to understanding what people want. It serves as the catalyst for that discovery process. And that's where we begin to gather that information that helps us to better understand who people are so that we can help them plan the right supports that matter for them. And so this is what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a place of better understanding. We want to make sure that we're discovering what people value and find meaningful. We want to understand what motivates people towards that goal achievement. And when I say people, I'm talking about people who may be living with developmental disabilities, but also the people in your organization, your staff. We want to better understand what people are communicating through the way that they respond. We want to understand how do we develop better teaching methods and plans of support for people that really help to achieve or get that goal fulfillment, that get that result that everyday learning can produce if we're looking at it through the lens of person-centered practices. We want to make sure that through person-centered thinking, we're creating inclusive learning environments that increase a person's positive reputation and how they're known and seen in their community. I'm going to hand it over to Heather for her to then talk about how does this all relate to what we do in person-centered planning.
Thanks, Shay, appreciate it. And just to reiterate what Shay had already shared with us, when we're talking about person-centered planning, we really are talking about a process that helps people discover what they want their lives to look like and how they want their lives to progress, knowing that life is messy and it's ever changing. And even when we have the best laid plans, it can change. Shay, I was looking at your slide of the past and moving to the future, and I wrote a note down, and this has been something that's been important to me lately, and I think it really applies here in person-centered practices. When you think about person-centered practices and you think about sitting down with a circle of support and really assessing a person's life, this is the place where growth really happens. And this was the quote that I was thinking about. And it's the idea that growth occurs in the space between what has been and what will be. And so when we're sitting down and we're talking about doing person-centered planning, we really are sitting down with that person, letting them guide their lives. And it's a place of growth, not just for the person supported, but for the circle of support as well. It's an opportunity for us to listen with intent and learn about that person so that we can all move forward with this collaborative process. And so as we're looking at moving forward in a collaborative process, it allows us to be partners with the person supported and not be someone who is powering over them or dictating to them what their life should be. Instead, we listen and we learn and we grow and we kind of try to figure out, hey, what is it that this person desired in life? And how do we provide those supports that are necessary for someone to accomplish those goals and hopes and dreams in their lives? Shay was talking to us about the heart and the why. And in order to make that happen, we got to dig a little bit deeper into the how, because the why is the mission. The why is where we want to go with this person on this life journey. But we have to have some sort of a framework to talk about, the how and how do we get there. And that's where, learning from information that we're collecting on a person starts to really help us gather information that will help that person grow and help us grow as a part of their circle of support. So what you're looking at now is the balance between the things that are important to and for a person. As a quick refresher for those of you who has heard it before, or as an introduction to important for those of you who haven't, important to a person, we like to say, are the things that a person says that makes their heart sing, the things that are about their hopes and dreams, the things that keep you happy as a person. Whereas important for is going to focus a little bit more on your health and safety and being valued by your community. In all of our lives, these things will fall out of balance from time to time. Maybe you have a health scare, or maybe you're, in a real cycle of important to, and then all of a sudden you look at your bank account and you realize you've important to'd yourself into financial ruin, right? So sometimes these things get out of balance, but we constantly have to work back at bringing them into balance. Conversely, if we have a strong relationship with a group of people and something disrupts our ability to be together, sort of like this past year with COVID, or maybe there's a death or a breakup or a move, those kinds of things are some other things that can push us out of whack on our balance of important to and for. But then we have to look at how do we keep that balance? So how do we connect? How do we find new friends? Can we use some Zooming to keep connection and keep that balance going? It's a simple concept, right? I'm going to keep in balance the things that are important to me, the things that make me happy, bring me joy, make me feel good, and the things that are important for me, my health and my safety and being valued and productive in my community. Simple in concept, difficult, as we all know in our own lives, to maintain in real life. It is a core struggle that we all face. So helping others keep the scales balanced is key to helping people excuse me, helping people have a positive and meaningful life. So as we break down this important to in a little bit different way, and you're kind of looking at it in a chart form at this point, we start looking at important to as some of the people in relationships, the status and control we have in our own lives, things to do, places where we go, the idea of the rhythm and pace of life, right? The idea that it starts from the beginning of just how do I like to wake up in the morning? What do I take in my coffee? Sometimes those tiny little things get out of whack, and our important to can just feel that ball rolling downhill. It just keeps getting more and more and more out of balance. And then looking at important for, again, what's important for that person? How can that person be assured that their health is in check, that they are safe, that they are able to connect with their communities in a way that they are valued and contributing. And so you can look at this important too as an individualized tool to look at specifically different people and start teasing out those pieces of their lives and how to bring those into balance. But we can also take a look at those concepts from an organizational standpoint. And so not only are we looking at important to and for the people we support, but we're also looking at important to and for from your organization's perspective. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper, but starting to think about organizational culture, what's important to your organization and what's important for your organization. In other words, how does your organization bring these things into an alignment so that it becomes part of how you walk your walk and not just something you have to do? And so the idea would be that we understand that balance is about being able to look at things like helping design and pursue a person's hopes and dreams, celebrating people's accomplishments, looking at a good match between staff and the people they support, giving people that flexibility and those people we support the dignity to make their own informed choices and to make mistakes, right? So there is a certain amount of dignity of risk, as we say, allowing people to take small risks and make mistakes and move on with life. There's quite a few of you on this call today, and I'm sure that you guys have taken any number of different types of risk. Some may have been good ideas, and some in afterthought may have not been so good ideas. And this could be small things, or it could be big things. When I was 13 and really didn't have the right amount of, what would you say, judgment perhaps to make my own decisions, I did choose to go bungee jumping, and in retrospect it might not have been the smartest thing, but it was fun and I felt a lot of empowerment in having the opportunity to do that. But it can be small things too, like trying a new food for the first time, or going out and maybe parasailing or getting on a ski boat, or it could be any number of things, but just thinking about that dignity of risk and balancing the risk with the reward. When we start thinking more about the important fours, these are the have-tos of work. These are the things we have to get done in order to justify the work that we're all doing. It's where the rubber meets the road. These are things like documenting in a way that we are satisfying accreditation, that we are satisfying any auditing, that we are meeting the guidelines that are required for us to be able to bill for our services. It's collecting all that data that we have to collect, all that information that you have to collect to justify the services you're doing. But since we have to collect it anyway to justify what we're doing, we might as well make it fun and collect it in a way that tells a story and collect it in a way that is going to be meaningful for the team, so that you can use that information to grow as a team and to help the people that you support grow. So it's not just information for the sake of information, but it becomes information that is usable and that you can learn from, and that really does help encourage the best possible outcomes for the people that we support. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Shay to continue this dialogue about organizational culture and person-centered practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was really, really awesome. You said something so key. You mentioned that the way that we think has an impact, right, on our organization. You talked about culture. And so culture is a really dynamic, has a really dynamic impact on who you are as an organization, because it represents how you think. It represents basically the personality of who you are. It's what people feel when they walk into your organization, because they can see it through your responses and your connections to each other. And so in order for person-centeredness to really be a part of who you are and be pervasive through your organization, it has to be embedded into your organizational practice. It has to be embedded into your organizational culture, because the culture of your organization drives how people think. It drives how they define what is correct or what is not correct. It defines what they think about your policies and know about your procedures and the decisions that you make. It defines how people will view what you do in your community and the impact that you're making. And so in order for person-centeredness to be a part of, as Heather said, what you do on a day-to-day basis, it has to become a part of the guiding of what you think through your organizational culture. Right? It becomes the why, the philosophy that you're living out. And one of the things that we recognize is, as an organization, you're constantly growing. And so your culture is constantly growing and changing. And anything that you're adapting as you begin to grow in your knowledge of what person-centeredness is and taking on those as practice, it takes practice to do it. It takes little by little making a decision of how we're going to discuss our viewpoints through the framework of person-centered. It's thinking about how do we help our staff to think different in their approach and their support of people. It's having those conversations that build that learning environment. And so that is how you want to make an impact or a change to your organization, so that it is a part of is a part of who you are and not just what you do, right? It's about being able to have that transparency and collaboration between the individuals being supported, between families, community stakeholders, your staff members, having an opportunity to share their insight from what they're learning. It's about making sure that there is dedicated effort to providing meaningful support through staff matching. How do we pay attention to who are the people that we're hiring and how do they fit in the organization, and how do they fit with the people that they're supporting? It's about making a dedicated effort to create a learning organization where people can share their experiences and learn from that, where you're learning from each other, where you're learning from what you tried as you begin to take these different approaches. As Heather said before, it's about what are those new experiences or opportunities that people are having, but also as an organization, what are those new sort of things that you put in place in your policy and your procedure that reflect a person-centered mindset that you're trying to say, hey, this worked or this didn't work, and how can we do something different, all while making sure that you're maintaining a dignity of risk for everyone. It's about building that trust and that communication, so that everybody who is involved in your organization understand that they can come, they can be heard, that they can be trusted, that it is okay for them to make mistakes. And so I want to turn this over and give Heather a great opportunity to share from her organizational experience.
Great, thanks, Shay. So many important pieces of information that you just shared, and hopefully that I can kind of illustrate what that walk or that journey was like for me as a executive director of a organization, an IDD organization. As I mentioned, I worked with this organization for a number of years, and part of what I did was work with this team, largely the same team from beginning to end, at least the core players, but we moved the organizational culture. We had a huge cultural shift within the organization. When I arrived, the previous director had a lot of experience, but he'd been there a long time. He was former military, and the organization reflected that. There was a lot of, silos, a lot of different things happening in different silos, a lot of only need to know information, top down hierarchy kind of organization that we've seen. And I knew that in order to kind of move to a culture where we could do the type of person-centered practices that were really, important and meaningful, that we were going to have an organizational culture shift. And in order to do that, we started working on how do we create a culture of learning? How do we start to gain transparency? And some of that was absolutely doing it through Therap and the use of the Therap tools, but it was also through adopting, different leadership styles and principles. We started having really frequent management and staff meetings. We pulled together an advisory committee in addition to our board, and that advisory committee was built of people supported so that they would have a very clear voice. And actually, it got to the point where they led our organizational outcomes as a group. Who better to ask, how are we doing and where do we want to go, than the people that you're actually supporting? And so with the use of Therap, our documentation became very transparent, and it allowed a lot of collaboration among our employees. And through those things, along with open dialogue and an opportunity for staff to try out new things without adverse consequences, things where people's health and safety weren't at risk, then communication blossomed and people grew. And all of a sudden, there were new leaders being born within the organization. And ultimately, the people we supported benefited greatly from our organization being able to move from this very closed, tight, top-down kind of run organization into an organization that was really run with collaboration and a lot of, looking at the graphic, a lot of heads together around the table is what it took to get that done. And it took time. It took time. As Shay said, you gotta start somewhere. You gotta start small and just make those incremental changes so that they become the new habit instead of whatever you used to be doing. And that was huge when I first got there. It was, well, we always have done it this way. Okay, well, let's tear that apart. Let's talk about why. Let's talk about where did that come from? What is that about? And do we still need to do it that way, or can we let that go? And if we let that go, what are we going to replace it with that maybe will assist us in moving forward in a little bit more collaborative and productive kind of manner? So, basically that did move us into this idea of, capturing that data and getting good results. And it moved us into really looking at, okay, we've got our team of, paid employees and paid supporters. And so let's dig a little deeper. Let's see how that works on an individual basis. So looking at it from an organizational basis, this culture of collaboration, how do you make that whole thing match up when you're talking about a circle of support for somebody that is receiving the services? It's the same thing. So you go back and you look at that core of what's important to and for a person, and you also get the perspectives of the people who know and love them, the people who know them best, the people who spend time with them. And you gather that information from the person supported, from their loved ones, from other people in their lives that care for them or know them, and you listen to what people have to say. And I think, you have to also look at compromise. Sometimes somebody's going to think something's really important for a person, and that person may know that it's important for them. They may not really want to do it. Right now I'm a little heavier than I've ever been in my life, and I know it's important for me to probably take care of that for some health reasons. It's not really that important to me all the time. Sometimes I still want that ice cream, but you get the idea. I know that it's important. So you can get that buy-in because I want to live a long, healthy life. I want to see my kids be born, all that kind of thing. So even though it's not that important to me right now, it's important for me. And that's enough because there are things that are important to me that I can have if I take care of this important for. So as we're looking at that team and that circle of support, it's okay to have those open, transparent dialogues that sometimes get messy in those discussions and come up with some compromises on, what's the best way to support me and what are some things that maybe I have to give in on in order to have the best life that I want. And so then we can really start planning outcomes that are far richer for the person than we ever anticipated in the first place. And actually, as people start to live lives, as I'm going to demonstrate for you in just a little bit, sometimes it even goes beyond our wildest dreams. So a well thought out plan is a framework for supporters, but it should allow enough flexibility for creativity and for that framework to change as life changes. And so how do we know when the framework needs to change? We let all of that information that we've collected guide us and show us, well, it's time for the framework to change because the life is changing. Let's come back to the table. Where do we go from here? And so I do want to say, as we move into kind of looking at the whole person and looking at how Therap can support a person, it's lives that drive data and not the other way around. So I never want to say, let's collect information for information's sake, right? Let's pick all these data points and collect it. No, let's look at a person's life and pull from that what supports their life and how they continue to grow. And so we want to be able to grab supporting information out of what's going on in a person's life. So if you're looking at this graphic with the individual kind of towards the middle-ish, a little bit in the right-hand side than the top, this is kind of how Therap can help you do that. These are some things that, kind of demonstrate some of the tools and the different people that are in a person's life and how that all can fit together, from planning for health and safety, important too, in planning for goal development. Maybe that's important for health and safety being important for goal development, and those things a person wants being important too. Got that backwards, I apologize. But that way you can start to see all the different ways that we can collect information on a person's life, but always with that person in the middle and kind of taking up the most space, right? The person is the most important, whether it's a person that, you support in your organization. They should always have the biggest piece of that voice because it's their life that we're talking about. And at its core, our systems are person-centered and data-driven, meaning that they're designed to really focus exactly like that on the person supported in life they want to live in a way that collects information that's easy to use, fun, and efficient. And so we're going to take a short look at a few of these different things that you can do within the Therap system. And then I'm going to tell you a little story. And I'm going to teach you a little something about a person that, how a person's life can grow and develop over the course of just a few short months if we're listening and paying attention and learning from what information we're gathering. So you can see on here, there's a number of different modules that you could use in Therap, the different tools that are available to you, where you can gather different information. So, our individual data forms is where we're going to kind of take a deeper dive today in some of that reporting. T-logs is a way to communicate. Personal focus worksheets, which is a way to gather some really good data. I think Shay's going to talk a little bit about more of that after I tell my little story. Same with Life Course and some of these ISP tools. Also, you looking at support plans, behavioral plans, health tracking, again, keeping that balance, individual care plans, and even the IPOP and so many other things to start gathering that information on people that we support. So I want to take just a second to share with you guys some things about someone whose name is Olivia. And I will tell you, Olivia is somebody that is in my account, and she's a made up person, but she's not all that made up. She rings really near and dear to my heart because I think she and I probably share some characteristics. But to give you a little bit about Olivia and her background and her story, Olivia is probably around 30 years old, and she's been experiencing one of those COVID years, if you will, like the rest of us. She's put on some weight. She's gotten a little bit socially distanced from her friends. She's feeling a little low self-esteem, a little isolation. She's got a little bit of poor nutrition happening because, when we're home and alone and bored, we eat, we watch a lot of Netflix. And so you can see kind of what's happening to Olivia through this COVID. Well, Olivia has an ISP program, an ISP meeting, or a person-centered planning meeting, whatever your language is, where it's time for her circle of support to come together and really talk about things are starting to open up a little bit, but not a lot, but how can we help Olivia? And so they dig through and they find a lot of things that are important to and for and things that they can build goals on. But for Olivia, her mother thinks it's just really critically important that she have do some work on her health, and she'd like to see Olivia walk, which is good, and Olivia needs that. And she gets a little by, and she's like, yeah, I'm getting a little heavier. It's getting a little harder to do the things I love. I love volunteering at the animal shelter. That's getting a little harder. I don't have the energy to walk the dogs, that kind of thing. And so what we're going to do is take a quick look at Olivia, and we're going to take a quick look at how some of the documentation can kind of guide Olivia's life and help her kind of figure out for herself some new things in her life that will make life more fun and easier for her. So bear with me. I'm trying to pull up a screen. There we go. You guys should be seeing it now. So this is a report that comes out of Therap, and this is a what we call a programmatic report. And this report is looking at that goal that I was sharing you about Olivia and her exercising. And so you can see here that she has a goal to walk a couple of times a week. And here's her prompt levels: independent, verbal, physical, refused, not addressed, that kind of thing. But then if you want to come down here, we're able to pull in this report a graph of how that's going, if you will. And I was going to make it just a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. And so you can see here this yellow line is her refusal line. And so you can see in the beginning, Olivia was refusing quite a lot. Here in January, she's refusing half the time. But as it comes down all the way to May, she kind of stops refusing. And she's kind of doing it without refusing. Conversely, if you look at her independence scores, she's not independent at all. In other words, she's needing a lot of verbal and physical prompts. And in her case, the physical prompt kind of looked like just, Olivia, come on, let's go, let's do this. A little tap on the shoulder and verbal encouragement. And then all of a sudden, she's independent. She doesn't need those prompts. Sometimes not at all. And then we see something weird starts happening here in June. She starts refusing again. And this data, although it's good data, it tells us kind of what's happening. It doesn't really tell us why, but that's okay, because we can come over here and take a look at this report, which we call our clinician report, for the same data set. And now we have the narrative that goes along with it. And I'm not going to read every single point to you here, but I simply want to kind of give you an idea of what this is telling us. In the beginning, it's January, it's February, it's cold. Olivia doesn't want to go outside. She doesn't want to go walk. She wants to be where it's warm and comfortable. And she's not real thrilled about this, but she knows it's important to her, or important for her, so that she can lose some of that extra weight and feel better and have more fun when she's volunteering with her dogs. And so the staff is key in this. They're real creative, and they encourage Olivia, maybe let's try walking inside. Maybe we'll go to the mall and walk. That way it'll be warmer and we'll be more comfortable. And they get a little bit of buy-in from that. And actually, as it happens, one of the days that Olivia walks, she ends her walk at an ice cream purchase. Now, come on, y'all, we've all done this, right? We're doing that important for, we're making it happen, and then we want instant gratification and we buy the ice cream, right? So it's normal behavior, that's what happens. And so the staff thinks, okay, well, maybe next time we go to the mall, let's go before they open. That way there's no unplanned snacking, right? So this works to an extent, but there's still quite a bit of struggle. It's still cold and rainy, the mall becomes boring, you know, and so on and so forth. But as spring emerges, something else happens. So it looks like even at some point they try a treadmill. She's able to do that, but again, she's just not really that interested. But as spring emerges, they hit on something. And what they hit on is trail walking. They start realizing that Olivia has a real, she just loves the trail. The first time she ever goes out on a hiking trail, it's kind of life altering for her. And I kind of get that as a person who, you know, gets Olivia. She likes the feeling of the soft dirt under her feet, the smells out in the woods, the trees, the chirping birds. There's a lot to see. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to keep your attention when you're hiking. But even beyond that, hiking people are hiking people, and they like other hiking people, and they really do develop a community. When you're up there on the trails, it's real common to bump into somebody that can't wait to say, oh, just up there was a snake on the side of the trail, or, oh, let me tell you about this hike that I did here, there, this great waterfall. And so something happens. Olivia starts making friends. She starts meeting people on this hiking trail. And as she's hiking and meeting people, she's gaining independence. She's gaining this desire to do it more and more often. And then one day she meets a particular friend. And this particular friend has a dog. And Olivia is drawn to this particular friend because she loves dogs. And she starts talking to this guy, and they kind of are on the trails at the same time. And over the course of time, something really cool happens. And Olivia is able to work with this guy and have a really cool experience where they start developing a fundraiser hike for the animal shelter that she works for. And so this goal that she had that, you know, she wasn't really interested at all at the beginning, other than she knew it was important and something she needed to do because she wanted to be able to keep doing the fun things that she liked to do with her animals and her, it ended up being life altering for her. But remember, I showed you there in June where something kind of funky happened and she started refusing again. Well, Olivia had a fall. She fell and she hurt herself. And that's why she started refusing, because she was having pain. And what you're looking at is our general event report, which is our incident reporting mechanism in Therap. And she had an injury. And if I come down here to the bottom of this report, you'll see the team, you know, they talked about some different things. Maybe, oh, I didn't mention, but she started going up these trails independently with just her natural supports. And then they kind of, you know, the team goes back to, oh, we got to go with her. Oh, we got to, you know, but no, after they thought about it and they sat down with Olivia and they planned on it, they went ahead and did some really, you know, some good training, talking to her about, okay, make sure that when you're bearing weight on your foot, that it's on stable ground before you pick up your other foot. They talked about trying hiking poles and whatnot. But again, it's a real life risk. When you're up there on a hiking trail in the mountains, the ground can be slippery, it can be wet, it can be sandy or gravelly, and we all fall down. It's not just Olivia, we all fall down. But then, you know, with the help of the team and some of these new interventions, they were able to get Olivia to the place where she's back on the trails again with her friends, doing the things that she loves. And so, you know, in summary, I just want to remind you guys that through this same process, I've witnessed changes in the lives of people that I support, in the lives of my family and people that I love. You know, this process has even helped me at points in times doing my own planning on myself. But yeah, it can be really, really meaningful. People I support have got to do things that we never even dreamed, like holding down jobs or joining a community cornhole tournament. Or, you know, I had a person that I supported went to go visit their childhood home place for the first time and see their parents' graves for the first time as an almost 70-year-old woman, because she finally had the voice to say, hey, this is something that I want and something that I desire. And we were able to make that happen for her. So collaboration, listening, and learning from each other are all key to supporting someone to accomplish their hopes and dreams. And that's a bridge that's going to take us deeper. And that's where I'll turn it over to Shay, because Shay is going to share with you some of the different tools that are going to allow you to take a deeper look into how to help plan for a person-centered life.
Thank you so much, Heather. Such a great story about Olivia and how you can really use the information that you're capturing to make decisions to help that person really experience the life that they desire. Inside of our Therap system, we have many different tools that help with that. And one of them is our personal focus worksheet. It is a 22-question document divided into 5 sections, and it captures all of the information that is really important and pertinent in your person-centered planning process. So it becomes one of those reservoirs where you can take all the information that you've learned through your observations and interactions with Olivia to then serve as a place where you can begin to create a plan or start the process of creating a plan in collaboration with that person that you're supporting in order to get them the life that they desire. So you're able to capture what's important to and balance that with what's important for. You're able to find what's meaningful and valuable in a person's spiritual life, in their religious life, in their cultural considerations, and in all of the things that make for a whole life for a person. You're able to balance that with the supports that are necessary for that person to interact in their community and what they want to do or what they need to build on in the capacity of how they want to experience life through employment or through just different opportunities. So it's a great place to really capture who that person is and capture that information that lends towards planning, but also it serves as a great document when your staff are coming in and getting to know someone. It serves as a place to really understand who that person is with a full picture. We also have something that is wonderful, a different person-centered framework called Charting the Life Course. And what I really love about Charting the Life Course is it really helps you to know who this person is, to start that conversation with simplicity in helping people to really envision what they want for the future, but also know what they want to stay away from. It helps you to really think about what is my dream versus what is my nightmare? And how do I then make decisions along the way that helps me get to what I say I want? This framework really helps with what we call anticipatory guidance, because as you walk through this process with a person, you really begin to think about who is this person from one transition point to another in their life, how are they changing, and how do those supports change over time? That relates back to something that Heather talked about, that we're all different people at different points in time. And so this life trajectory tool really helps us to frame out who that person is at this snapshot in time, and how do we help them make decisions, or what are the supports that are necessary for them to get and walk on the line of where they want to go rather than going towards what they don't. There's also the integrated support star that really serves as a powerful planning and problem solving tool that helps you to think about, as this person is being supported, is there a particular thing that they want to work through? Is there a particular obstacle that they need to overcome, or something that they want to think about? In this particular case, the person wanted to have an opportunity where they had less staff that were supporting them. And so the integrated support star helps you to think about, what are the personal strengths and assets that you as a person bring to the table that help you towards this particular specific goal that you're working on? What are the relationships that you can leverage in your life that maybe have information that help you to navigate through this new experience, or that can help in the supports that are necessary towards the goal you're working on? What is the technology that you have around you that can then again give you the information, or maybe assist in a place where a person might have assisted before? What are those community-based resources and connections and relationships that you might have that provide resources and opportunities that otherwise you would have to qualify for? But it also helps you to balance that with those eligibility specific things. What's in your funding, and how might your funding be impacted by the decision that you are going to make? And so that is a great tool for problem solving and planning. And then there's also the life domain vision tools. And each of these tools are helpful, can be used all together, can be used separate. But this really helps you to think through and help people plan through these 6 dominant sort of social determinants of health, if you will, these quality of life indicators, these areas that we all can look at in our lives and say, here are the things that we value, and here's where we want this to go. How do I make and plan what my vision is in this particular area, so then I can then identify what supports I might need? And so using this tool, you can use it from 2 different perspectives, one from the individual perspective, but also in collaboration with the family. And what I love about this particular Charting the Life course tool for planning and problem solving is it really elevates the voice of the person to help them say what is the priority that they want for those particular areas and what they want to work on. So these are just a few tools of many that we have inside of our system. And certainly we hope that you will reach out if you're interested in learning more. I want to turn this back over to Jason to have an opportunity to go towards our questions.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Hang on 1 second. Okay, good deal. So again, thank you both, Shay and Heather, for the phenomenal perspective, and in particular, all of the kind of the examples and things that you talk about, which really give depth, I think, to a lot of the concepts that we're trying to push here, and really the way that the person is always coming first in the decision making, and not the other way around, and that we're always kind of balancing that risk and reward. I think that's something that we all struggle with sometimes, given our inherent responsibilities as support providers and caregivers. Is we're often taught to consider risk, but don't always consider reward. And so kind of bringing those things together and learning how to balance that in the overall interest of the person's life is extraordinarily important. So again, I greatly appreciate both of your perspectives on that. One of the other things that really struck me through the course of the presentation was not only the discussion that you had about these different concepts, but also an acknowledgement, frankly, of the difficulty of it, given all the environment that we all work in and some of the things that we have on our plate. And so to that end, what I'd like to do is share with you a couple of questions that we have here around that balance in some of the situations that I know a lot of our users out there find us in, and would love to hear your perspective on these. The first one being, for a lot of us, we want to be person-centered in our planning and our processes and in our services, but oftentimes we're in a position where, we're not the ones developing the plan. That plan's provided to us either from a state entity, perhaps a support coordination entity, or a case management group, or whatever the case may be. We may not feel like we have that ability to directly create the plan. So what can we do when we're in a situation where it's kind of put upon us rather than us being able to develop it directly with the individual ourselves?
I'd like to take that one if you don't mind, Shay. I think the idea is pre-plan. You guys, as the providers, people the best, right? You and the families that support them. And, that's an opportunity for you guys to do some pre-planning. Doing a one-page description on the person, jotting down, what you would like to admire about the person, what's important to the person, for the person, supports that they need. We offer a person-focused worksheet, which will allow you to ask and answer questions with and about the person that you support, so that when you come to that meeting, when you come to those discussions with those outside entities, you come armed with pieces of information that, are not something that are easily refutable. It becomes very hard to say, well, I don't think that's a good idea, when you have data and information to back up. Hey, we've already talked to this person. They're in the meeting confirming, yes, we've already talked about it. This is what I want in my life. And so you can bring that to those discussions so that you're armed with good information right out from the beginning. And so then that stuff gets into that person's plan, regardless of who writes it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Heather. And I completely agree that's basically, that's what got to go into it, that it's really kind of all hands on deck and making sure that person's voice is represented in that process. We've had actually a question come in through the chat that I think Shay would like to answer. I'll read it out live for those of you that may not be able to see it. Sometimes it can be difficult to gather information for a person who either doesn't speak or hear. This particular person usually gathers information from observing the person and their team members. Are there any other suggestions that you guys may have in terms of how to best support a person in that situation? Shay?
Yes, so I totally, I think that you're right on point with what you're doing. Certainly if a person doesn't typically use words to communicate, that makes it, you have to definitely approach it in a different fashion, but we can learn a lot about people through our observations. There are often times when just through our body language, we might not ever utter a word, but the people who have a relationship with us and know us best are able to know exactly what that or that grunt means, right? And so just taking an opportunity, as you're already doing, to learn from those observations, those interactions, those reactions from that person can indicate a lot. Being able to record that. One of the things that we find very valuable as a tool of recording is a communication chart, so that other people who maybe are getting to know that person are able to keep that continuity of support, because they then have learned what those particular actions or reactions might mean. And also what you already mentioned in learning from your team members, that they're all sharing their different experiences, but putting that information together so that others are able to communicate with this person in a way that supports them and respects who they are as a person. I think that you're right on track for what you're doing. And Heather, I'm not sure if you want to add anything different, but that is what I would say to that.
No, I think you captured that quite well. It's absolutely in those opportunities where you have to pull in the people that know them best, the people that love them. I would say the people that when you observe that person, that person lights up and gets excited when they see that person, because then that's someone that they trust. And so when you're reaching out to people that the person supported trusts, you're going to get a good course of action to help that person actualize their hopes and dreams. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Shay.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
All right, so we've got about a minute left. I've got one last question. I'm going to kind of put you guys on the spot here, because we've had one other question come in through the chat, and I think it's a great question and certainly something that a lot of us who've been with providers before have dealt with. So I'd be very interested in you guys' perspective on this. What do we do if we feel like the desires of the individual and the desires of their particular guardian or family member, whatever the case might be, maybe those don't line up exactly the way we would like them to. What can we do as providers to kind of mitigate that while making sure that we're putting the person's interests first? Anybody want to take that one?
I mean, I'll start, and then Shay, if you want to add, is that okay?
That's fine.
Sure. So thinking about that, to me, there is a tool, a person-centered thinking tool out there that helps with this. It's just looking at what's working and not working in a person's life, because that allows you to kind of pull down different perspectives. And I think looking at those different perspectives and then figuring out where is the weight, where are these important pieces for that person, how much does it matter on either side, but it opens up the opportunity for a dialogue. But when I'm looking at employment and I'm seeing, you know, in this comment, unable to work, doesn't want to do part-time, then I say take a step back and look at what are those person's interests, what are the things that the person is excited about and interested in, and maybe look down those lines of opportunity to potentially come up with something that could satisfy, you know, the guardian's desire for that person to work, and maybe that person ends up with some sort of job that doesn't feel so much like working. You know, there are a lot of things that I could be doing right now that would feel like work and make me miserable and unhappy. You know, I could be, I don't know, packing boxes every day, but I'm not. I'm working at Therap and I'm getting to talk to all you guys, and it's fun. And I don't even hardly think of it as work anymore most days because I'm doing something that I love. So start focusing on what the person loves and what makes them happy, and kind of see where that journey takes you. Shay, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I think the other part of that is having an opportunity to sort of peel the onion to the why of what the guardians are driving. What is it that, why do they think that that person needs to work, right? Can we get to the heart of that so that then once they feel heard and valued, it might make it easier for them to understand the why of the individual and what they're not interested in. And you might be able to find a place of compromise between the both, right? How many of us have sort of have an entrepreneurial spirit and there's something that we're passionate about? Maybe it's painting, maybe it's crocheting. It might be any of those things that we would absolutely do without getting paid. And we might be able to take that and marry something that a person is really interested in. Maybe it's their art that they create that could be sold somewhere else. And so you're meeting maybe the concern about the financial need that the person has, but also marrying it with something that they're really passionate about. Jason, are there other questions? I'm sorry, trying to keep up.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to keep up with them myself. And to be honest with you guys, I greatly appreciate all of the comments and questions that have been coming in. They're phenomenal. Unfortunately, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we've already slipped a little bit past that, so my apologies to you. But all of this chat and stuff is kind of getting recorded on the back end, so we'll try to follow up with you with additional questions. But for all of you that submitted information, thank you. And certainly for our speakers, thank you guys for your phenomenal perspective and responses to some of those questions. Those are some tough circumstances, and so we really appreciate your insight and assistance that you can provide to our attendees on some of the ways to be able to deal with that. And so with that, we'll kind of come to our conclusion today. Again, we really, really appreciate you guys joining us for the presentation this afternoon, and for being as engaged as you are, and for the phenomenal points that you've made through the chat and through the Q&A. And we'll leave you with a couple of bits of information. Again, just a reminder about kind of the final piece of our webinar series that we're doing this summer. It's going to be coming up on Friday, August the 27th, where we're really going to kind of take the concepts of the two previous webinars and marry them together. Shay and I are going to do a presentation where we talk about a lot of the things that were discussed today around person-centeredness, but we're going to also talk about them through the lens of being data-driven. You know, oftentimes those are kind of seen as competing ideas. We've got the bean counters that are looking at the data. We've got the social workers that are looking at the outcomes. But in reality, those two things really have to work in tandem for us to be as good as we can possibly be, and really get the kind of quality and outcomes that we're all looking for. So I do hope you'll join us for our final webinar next month. The registration information for that should be coming out shortly. We're going to distribute that through our listservs. It will also be available on our homepage, hopefully in the very near future. So I do hope you'll join us there. Also want to put a plug in for our national conference coming up in February. We are going to be virtual again this year, but the good news about virtual is that it's cheap and we can offer this for free for everybody. So if you want to get in there and register early, then you can get free attendance to a pretty phenomenal event. I think last year we had nearly 1,000 or so, maybe a little over 1,000 folks registered for it. We're able to do sessions on just a huge number of different topics, many of which are related to the kinds of things that we discussed today. So please go to our site and register for the national conference coming up, and also stay connected with us. We send out a lot of information through a lot of channels. Obviously, you guys know our website pretty well by now, but we also have a Facebook, a Twitter, and a LinkedIn account where you can get updates around new developments we're doing, new presentations we're doing, and other things like that. So with that, I will again say thank you to all of you that gave us a little time out of your day today. And we look forward to catching you next month at the next presentation. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.